Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to discuss about key features of linear functions. Objective number 1, I can identify the domain and range of a linear function. So we're given a graph here and we're going to identify both the domain and range of this linear function. So I want you to remember, if you're looking for the domain, those are the x values. So you have to mark your graph left to right. So you mark the graph left to right. And whenever your mark is being touched by those arrows, that means that your domain is the set of all real numbers. Okay? So now let us go and do the range. So, by the way, that R with the double bar right there is the symbol for the set of all real numbers. So let us now go and identify the range. Okay? If it's the range, you're looking for the y values and you're marking bottom to top. So always least to greatest. So bottom to top. So the bottom mark is being touched by an arrow, and that is also an arrow. So again, this range is again set of all real numbers. Objective 2. So you have a graph again, but this time your graph is a little bit different, but follow the same procedure. So mark the left and mark the right for the domain. So this is that arrow, so your domain starts with an X and the symbol always go that way. Your least is 2 and your greatest is infinity because that is arrow. This is a solid circle, so you're going to put like an equal sign at the bottom. So that is it. That's your domain. However, usually we don't put this anymore, so I'll cross that out. And this is read as x is greater than or equal to 2. All right, let us now go ahead and do the range. So once again, for the range, you mark bottom to top. So I'm going to mark the bottom, and I'm going to mark the top. So start with y. This symbol is always like that. Your least is, I believe, at 5. And your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And your greatest is infinity because that's arrow. You don't put an equal sign on the infinity because infinity is never going to be equal. However, on the 5, that's a solid circle. So you're going to put the equal sign at the bottom. And that is it. That is your range. However, usually we don't do this anymore. And this is read as y is greater than or equal to 5. So that's it. That's your domain and range. So still on objective 1, this is another problem on domain and range given a graph. So if you read the problem, it's going to ask you for the domain and range. So the domain, again, marked left to right. And those are your numbers. So your domain is from 1 to 6 shirts. Okay, so now let us do the range. I believe range is cost. You mark bottom to top, and your range is, again, that's y. Symbol is always like that. Your lowest is $10 and your highest is 50. Those are all solid circles, so you put the equal sign. So those are your domain and range. Next problem on objective 1 is there's a graph again, and we're going to identify the domain and range. So after marking left or right, you're going to write our notation. So let me explain how I wrote the notation. So the lowest here is a -5 that has no equal sign because it's open, and this one has is closed. That is why you have the equal sign. Now we're going to identify the range by marking bottom to top. After marking bottom to top, you're going to write y because it is range. And then you're going to write down your symbols. And then your lowest value is a -2. And then your highest value is a +3. And then you're going to take a look at your endpoint. So this one is open, so you don't put an equal sign. But that one on the 3 is closed, so you put the equal sign. And that right there is our range. Last and final example for objective 1. Again, we're going to mark left to right to identify our domain. Okay, left to right is marked. Okay, the way to set this up, write X and then those symbols. This 2 is your lowest value, 10 is your highest value, 10 is close, which is why the equal sign, 2 is not, so there's no equal sign. So that's your domain. Okay, now let me explain to you what I did with the range. So range is marking bottom to top. If I mark bottom to top of this particular line, it is pointing me to one single number, and that one single value is a -5. So therefore your Y or your range is Y equals -5, because that's only one single number. We now go to objective number 2, which is I can identify domain and range based off of problem situation. So if you read this problem and you look at this equation, you're going to realize that X is the number of text messages. And so you're given up to 500 messages, and you know that X is your domain. So therefore your domain is X is greater than or equal to 0, but less than or equal to 500 is your domain. Okay, so let me explain the 0. 0 is when you don't text. And 500 is the maximum text messages that you can have. So let's take a look at your range and let me explain to you how I got that range. So if you don't text and you plug in 0 here, 0 times 10 cents is going to be 0 plus 2, and that will be your like your membership fee or your monthly additional service fee. And the $52 is if you plug in 500 in X, so 500 times 0.1 or 500 times 10 cents is $50 plus 2 service fee is going to give you 52. So that's the maximum amount. So again, your range is the amount and your domain is the text messages. Okay, there's another way to approach this, which is plug this in on Desmos and examine your graph. So when you examine your graph, your initial point right here, which is 0, 2, means that 0 text is going to make you pay $2 because X value is the text and the Y value is the amount. So the 2 that you see there is the amount if you don't text at all. So let's take a look at what if you texted 500 times. So let's look at this. So there you go. 500 text messages you will have a charge of $52. So Aisha just received $40 paycheck from her new job. She spends some of it buying music online and saves the rest in a bank account. Her savings is given by this equation where X is the number of songs that she can download at 1.25 per song. So what will be the domain range? Again, the domain are the X values, which means they're the songs. So you will have to find out here how many songs can she buy with $1.25 per song. So let's take a look at this with the use of Desmos. So this is your y-intercept. So if she does not buy any song, which is the X value 0, then she has $40 in her bank account. Okay, so that means that her domain is from 0 to 32 songs. And now the range is from $0 to $40. Objective number 3, I can identify and interpret X and Y intercepts and linear functions from word problems, tables, and graphs. In this case, what's the X-intercept? As you all can see, the X-intercept is at 15. And so that is the number of hours when you have already drained whatever this is. I think this is a tank of water, gallons. So that is whenever it says 15. B is wrong because it says it is 15 hours, which represents the amount of time that it would take to completely fill up. So that's the mistake right there. You're not filling it up, you're draining it. So in this case, the answer is C, which is the X-intercept is 15 hours, which means that after 15 hours, there will be 0 gallons of water in the water tank. Okay, problem number 2 on objective 3. What's the meaning of the y-intercept? So everyone, this is your y-intercept. It's the 800. Y-intercept is the starting amount. It's the initial amount. Another vocab is beginning amount. It's the deposit. So right here is your keyword. So the starting amount of money in the bank balance. The starting amount of money in the bank balance is 800 at 0 months. And that's what the y-intercept of this graph represent. Objective 4, I can graph linear functions given a table of values or an equation in various forms. In this case, we're going to use our Desmos. What you will do is just plug this in and match the graph. And as you can see, the answer here is letter B. Okay, so our next example has a table. So how are you going to match this? Is you're going to click on this cross, you're going to click on the table, and you're going to plug in all those numbers. Okay, as you can see, once I plugged in all the numbers, there's going to be dots, and that is a match for letter A. Last and final objective, I can determine and identify key features of linear functions given in various representations, and in this case, we're asked of the slope. Guys, slope is rise over run. If you take a look at your 2 points, you can go both ways. If you're coming from this point going to that point, your rise is a -1 and your run is a +5 because you're going to the right. How many jumps do you have? You have 5 jumps. So +5. So a negative over a positive will give you a negative value. Also, look at your line is going down. So that means that your line is decreasing. Therefore, it is negative. Now, what if you're coming from this point going to this point? How will you represent that? You can do that as well. So your rise is going to be +1 because you're going up, and your run is negative because you're going to the left. So how will that look like? It is going to look like this. So +1 because you moved up, -5 because you went to the left 5 times, and so your value is also -1/5. Therefore, your answer here is letter C. So on here, you're going to, you know that this is positive because your line is going up. Therefore, this is already scratched out. Scratch out, you're down to 2. Again, let's do our rise over run. Okay, and again, we can do both ways, okay? If we're coming here from the bottom, your rise is +2 because you went up. And then your run is +1 because you went to the right. So +2 over +1 is +2. So now let's go ahead and check it out. What's going to happen is if I'm coming from this point, my rise is down, and that's a -2. And my run is to the left, and that is also a negative. It's a -1. You know that negative over negative is a positive. So again, your answer is letter D. For our last and final example, what's going to happen if you're given 2 coordinates? Then you're going to use the slope formula, which is slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And all you need to do is to label. After you label your coordinates, so x1, y1, x2, y2, you're going to just substitute your values. Okay, I now substituted my values using parentheses. So 5 minus 0 equals -8 minus -19. And at this point, you are going to use Desmos. Okay, so when I used my Desmos, it looked like this. And the answer is in decimal, but if you click on this circle right here, it's going to give you the fraction, which is 5/11. You can also do it one by one, and you can do what is 5 minus 0. Can also just do this like this. 5 minus 0 is 5, and then you can just do on here minus -19. You don't even have to put the parentheses. It is okay. And that is going to be right here over 11. And that gives you the answer, which is letter B. Okay guys, so that is it for our key features of linear functions, and I hope you have learned a lot today.